So, story time. This is the story of Michael and Thomas Connelly, a pair of good Irish-American brothers who owned a building supply company, and this is a true story. Well, they worked hard and built something to be proud of, but God rest his soul, one day Michael passed away, and when he did, thank goodness, he and his brother had had the foresight to sit down with their attorneys, financial advisors, and everyone on the legal team and draw up some really solid agreements about what happened when that did. That's a good thing too, because let me tell you, situations get sticky enough without everything in writing. Well, luckily they did have everything in writing. And they had prepared by putting what's called a buy-sell agreement in place. And if you're a business owner, as many of you who watch this channel are, you're probably familiar with buy-sell agreements. What this buy-sell agreement was, a very common type, it was an entity purchase agreement. Basically what happened, when Michael went to his eternal reward, Thomas got the business to purchase his shares so that Michael's family got money, which is what they wanted, and the business, now fully owned by Thomas, got his shares so that he could run it in the way he saw fit. Very common arrangement, right? Everything was going swimmingly until the IRS stepped in. Common case, right? And what they did was they valued the business at $5.3 million, which is nearly twice what it would have been, in fact a little bit more than twice, because what they did was rather than valuing it at $2.3 million, which is where it should have been valued according to the estate planners, they included, the IRS did, the value of the life insurance from that buy-sell agreement that had paid into the business, which had been contractually obligated for those funds to be used to purchase deceased brother Michael's shares. So, what the Supreme Court decided, because that family and the estate argued this from the local courts all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, what they decided earlier this summer, by the way, on a unanimous basis, which is a rare thing in today's Supreme Court cases, was that the IRS's interpretation of including that insurance proceeds amount in the value of the business for federal estate tax purposes was correct. So what that meant is the family then had to pay almost an additional $1 million in estate tax to the good old US government when they were not expecting to do so. And this is besides all the time, headache, money, attorney's fees that they spent over the last several years, because this case did go on for several years, fighting this thing. So what does this mean for you guys? Well, long story short, if you have a buy-sell agreement, it's time to whip that thing out, sit down, and read through it. Ideally, with your professional partner, specifically your attorney and your financial advisor, and if you have one that's separate from your financial advisor, your insurance agent. This is very important, because if you're in business with someone else, and particularly if you're in business with several someone else's, number one, if you don't have one, you need a buy-sell agreement. Number two, you need to make sure that that buy-sell agreement now takes into account that entity purchase agreements are going to value that life insurance payout as part of the business's proceeds for estate tax purposes. Meaning that if you are going to be anywhere near that federal estate tax limit, which this year is just north of $13 million, you need to be aware of this. Now, I hear you already, you're saying, but John, my estate isn't going to be anywhere near that. You know, it's probably going to be a couple $1 million. Well, guess what? That was the case for the Connellys back when this happened in the mid-2010s. However, there are two things that I would respond to you if you were to say that. The first is that, yes, it may be worth much less than that limit right now, but unless you plan on passing away in the very near future, chances are that that business and your estate in general is going to continue to grow and may very well bump up against that limit. In fact, the US government is due to cut that limit, again, it's just north of $13 million, in half, meaning that if your estate is over, well, again, it's indexed for inflation, but round numbers, let's just say $6.5, $7 million, after the year 2025, you could very well run up against estate taxes. And a lot of people don't realize that, and they get pretty hefty pretty quick. The other thing is that while it's true that your estate may not yet be near the federal estate tax number, there are 18 states, 17 of which have a lower limit, of either estate or inheritance taxes than the federal government. So in other words, even if you're below the federal limit of 13 million and change, you may very well get estate tax from the state that is much lower. For example, Maryland and Washington, D.C. both have estate or inheritance taxes that are lower than the federal limit. So, why do I bring all this up? Because now is a perfect time, especially if you haven't done so recently, to take a look at how your buy-sell agreements are structured, and also take the opportunity to make sure that they still reflect the value of the business as it stands. You know, if it's been 5 years, 10 years since you set that up, maybe you brought on another partner or two. Maybe you've had a significant growth in business and now the life insurance that you bought to fund that agreement is no longer in place. There are ways around this, despite the fact that the IRS and the US Supreme Court have made it a little bit more difficult. There are ways around this in a perfectly legal, ethical way. Now that would be considered legal advice, which of course I can't give, but I'd be happy to talk about some strategies with you one-on-one, particularly when bringing in your estate or business attorney, on how you can make sure that your business does not get hit with this new ruling unexpectedly. So, if you'd like to learn more, or you're wondering, shoot, am I going to be cut off by this? Am I going to get a huge estate tax bill? Or rather, are my beneficiaries, my family, the people I leave behind, going to get hit with this unexpectedly? Give us a call or drop us a line here. We're happy to chat further, find out more about your situation, and see if we can help. And in the meantime, I'll see you out there.